Hi, friends. I wanted to come on here and chat about something that my partner and I have been coming to accept more and more as truth, and it contradicts something that a lot of people talk about in the spiritual space. So, that is how if you go on Instagram and you follow anyone, odds are you've probably seen someone talk about how when you meet the person who is meant for you, it's just all going to be easy and it's all going to fall into place and you're not going to be triggered and your system's going to feel safe and everything's going to be perfect. If we lived in a healed world, a world in which people were not coming into partnerships with some residual baggage, even if they've been on a journey of healing, that might be the case. However, that's not the world that we exist within. And almost all of us are going to come into partnership with some fears and some feelings around, well, I learned through my experiences and hold unconscious beliefs that, for example, all men are dangerous, going to harm you, and you can't trust their love. This is an example, right, of some of the stuff that I've had to acknowledge lived within me, have it be triggered to the surface, be willing to see it, and then be willing to actually see my partner in their reality versus my projections of them. So I believe that one of the big goals of healing, whatever we want to call it, it is healing, but that's become like a whole thing, right? Um, is to clear all of the distortions which keep us from being able to see truth. And I don't mean that we have to become perfect in some timeline. I'm saying that our whole life is the ceremony. Our whole life is continually reflecting back to us our own projections, which are the things within us that are unconscious that we've been unwilling to face. And they're still screaming for our attention. And I like to think of those parts as neglected children in the context of if you were to go adopt a child who had been neglected and maybe abused psychologically, maybe they were neglected, maybe they were physically abused, maybe they were sexually abused, and you were like, I'm just gonna love them and they're gonna instantly be this wide open, trusting, loving person, you'd be insane. And almost anyone would tell you that, right? You can't have this delusional fairy tale version of how a person is going to receive you, if you're meant for them, if you're meant for each other, right? So it can't be this thing of like, if you're meant for each other, it's just going to be this rainbows and unicorn farts and whatever you anticipate it being, right? What we have come to believe to be true, and this is based on the guidance from one of Joe's spiritual teachers who is in her 80s. She's had her own relationships. She's had children. She's also extremely spiritually gifted. She did a joint session with us at one point, and she's able to tap into basically like the souls of each person. And normally she does this in an individual basis, but she was doing it for us together after having done separate sessions for each of us in different capacities. And she said a bunch of things, but the things that have stuck with us were that she said, I do believe that you two are divine counterparts, and that we don't come into contact with our divine counterparts until we reach a certain phase in our own like soul evolution or our own evolution for this current incarnation. It was something about you reach a certain point and then your divine counterparts are able to come in, whereas previously it's karmic partners that are teaching us lessons to help us clear things, to ideally prepare us to step into these divine counterparts in which our purpose is directly entangled with that person. And I like to think of it as interdependence, right? Excuse me. So I like to think about it in the context of your divine counterpart, who she explained it can be platonic also. She said Saint Francis and oof, is it Saint Clare? Saint Francis had a counterpart. It was a female. I cannot remember her name. I think it was Saint Clare. And they accomplished something really incredible in their lifetime, but it never became sexual. It was just this connection and this joint, like this shared vision, right? I posted something a little while ago about how it's really crucial for partners to have a shared vision. And if it's a divine counterpart, it's a natural shared vision. However, usually to step into your dharma, there's so many layers here, right? There's to step into your dharma. What I'm finding is that it requires you to alchemize your deepest fears. So, whatever that looks like for you, it's just something to look forward to. And in order to step into partnership with our divine union, whether that's going to be platonic, a romantic bond, I do believe most of them tend to be a true romantic union. But the example she gave was just to highlight that it's not always that way, right? She gave some other examples of really public figures who were divine counterparts based on the awarenesses that this woman holds. I was about to say her name. However, they very publicly blew up and weren't able to step into their dharma together. And she was giving that example to highlight how turbulent a relationship with a divine counterpart has the potential to be if we're still in denial or refusing to be with these parts of ourselves that are calling for us to bring them back in so that we can return to wholeness. So if you think about it, the path of divine union, the path to stepping into your dharma, and the path that leads up to that, our karmic relationships, the healing that we do on our own, everyone that triggers things and reflects things back to us, they're all a part of helping us to return to wholeness. And by wholeness, I mean not having parts of you that you believe consciously or unconsciously, oftentimes this is unconscious, that those parts of you can't be here. They aren't allowed to be here. They're too much. They're dangerous. They're disruptive. They lead to you not being loved, whatever the story is, right? We can't return to wholeness if we still have exiled parts of us. I've never dove into internal family systems, but my understanding based on when I've talked to this about people, that there are parallels between what I talk about and internal family systems. So if you agree, if you want to drop in the comments, I would love to learn more. But refocusing, everything in our life is helping us to clear the distortions if we're willing to see it. So one of the most crucial parts in this path to healing and in this path to returning to wholeness and in this path to being able to step into our dharma and in this path to wanting to have divine union and whatever else we want, we have to be willing to trudge through the mud without resistance. And there's going to be resistance, but we have to eventually get to this point where we move past it. And as quickly as we release the resistance is how quickly we move past it, move into a breakthrough, which leads us into a new level of experiencing reality where we can see more clearly. So many things. I'm not going to get into that detail right now. But all of these things are trying to help us clear the distortion so that we can return to wholeness, and our different parts are being reflected to us in all of these different people around us, right? So I've got one recurring theme right now of a certain type of person who keeps coming into my life. And even in some of my readings, it's come up. I have a dear friend, Katie, who's a very clear channel who I still go to. And because when we are emotionally involved, it is very hard to see clearly, which is why we go to other people to help us see things about ourselves. Yet, if you have spiritual gifting, you can often help other people yourself see clearly about them because you're not emotionally involved in the situation. So one of my dear friends, Katie, when I've done readings with her, has talked about, this character that's been following me around. And she's a great reader in the sense that she doesn't just give you all the answers, but she'll give you, she'll help you see, right? And I've been mulling over, like, is this some part of me, some aspect of me that was developed and I'm still unconscious of, that it's time for me to be willing to see. And it's a gross one. It's one that I don't want to look at. And every time I meet a person like this, I'm like, you're either here to remind me of these other people from my younger years, or you are an aspect of me that I've denied because it's so gross to me. And these are the parts where it's really challenging to be on a path of healing. And these are the areas where I believe we get blind spots. And if we're going to lead other people, we have to be willing to see our reflections. We have to be willing to notice what triggers us. We have to be willing to acknowledge the recurring themes. And we have to become willing to take ownership and to really say, like, okay, this theme isn't following me around just because this theme is following me around because of something within me that is in alignment with, like, energetic resonance with this thing. So if we are going to really shift this world into something different, we're going to have to get a whole lot more humble, and we're going to have to be willing to really go even deeper with these layers within us that freak us out. And we're going to have to, I believe, shift this perspective around a fairy tale relationship that's been fed to us from a very early age, and recognize that when our partner triggers us, oh no, hopefully that wasn't too bad. When our partner triggers us, they're actually doing us a favor in helping us see parts of ourselves that are still unconscious. And if your goal really is to come into wholeness and have emotional freedom, then you will eventually thank them for this, even if you decide that your path does not involve them. So what I really want to encourage is really understanding that life is the ceremony. And if you're willing to notice, life is constantly reflecting back to you all the parts of you that you have been unconscious of. And many of those parts, like I referenced before, are like these neglected children that have been spending years being exiled, and they're in pain and they're angry. And that means we're going to have to allow a lot of what we think of as unpleasant emotions to move through us, and to give that our unconditional loving presence. And the big difference between becoming an emotional chaotic mess and alchemizing is that being able to hold yourself in this neutral energy, non-judgmental energy, acceptance energy, loving energy, forgiveness, all of these things, right? Like, we cannot go into it shaming ourselves. We can't go into it thinking that we should be different. And we also have to remember that these parts of us evolve when we meet them with tenderness, with understanding, because these parts are not trying to be bad. These parts have just been, maybe they developed to try to protect you. Maybe they developed in response to pain. Maybe they are just these parts of you that are terrified. And I believe that when we perceive having negative entities, attachments, it's because it resonates with some part of us. And if we are terrified of these experiences and we think that we are just the victim, we're never going to be free. So whether it's being a victim inside of your physical life, being a victim inside of your energetic realm life, whatever we want to call that, how can you take more ownership? And how can you be more tender with yourself? And how can you give to yourself what you're wanting the most, knowing that that's your responsibility first and that we cannot give from an empty cup? And then how can we begin to release this concept that the right person is going to just fix everything for us? That's not even fair. That's not a fair expectation. The right person gets to be human too. And we allow them space to be human, and we allow ourselves space to be human. And one of my favorite things that actually one of my former mentors had said to me is that our romantic relationship, is a direct reflection of our relationship to ourselves. And that was a hard one when I heard it, because that was when I was in that brief relationship that was a couple of months, and it was really, there was so much in there that I was like, oh, this has nothing to do with me. This is all him. But it wasn't until I was willing to take ownership that I began to resolve a lot within me very quickly. And it didn't feel like it when it first started. It just felt like a lot of pain and a lot of grief and a lot of anger and a lot of emotions. And I was really reconnecting with my capacity to feel. But the longer I sat with that concept of my relationships are a direct reflection, my romantic relationship is a direct reflection of my relationship with myself. And really, life itself is constantly reflecting these different aspects of myself back to me, because we don't draw in anything that's not in resonance with ourselves. Everything began to change, and I felt so much more empowered. And at first it can feel overwhelming, but if you're willing to hold yourself steady in it, it becomes empowering, because we begin to understand that we are in fact the origin point of everything that we create and draw to us in this reality. And when you really come to know that, the whole game changes. So again, I want to leave you with these ideas of life is the ceremony. We don't need to go. Plant medicines are beautiful, and I would encourage you to treat them with respect and reverence, and go into them with an understanding that they're not doing the work for you, just like a partner is not going to come save you. No one's coming to save you. It's your responsibility to save yourself and to heal yourself and to love yourself. And if you put that responsibility on your partner's shoulders, you will blow up your relationship, or you will find someone who is highly codependent and is going to play along with you, but eventually that's going to lead to its own friction. So, as always, I love you. I hope this was helpful. I hope that the point where I toppled over my microphone or whatever I did wasn't too bad for you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Please let me know if this video was helpful. Drop any other thoughts that you may have in the comments below. Just keep it respectful. Okay, thank you. Love you guys.